Hey everyone, and welcome to a brand new video. Tonight we have 2 hours of horror stories as per usual. I hope you all enjoy them. If you do, please be sure to drop a like rating. Let's see if we can reach 1,000 likes on this one. Dropping a like only takes a quick second and it helps out the channel immensely. Subscribing if you are new is also very much appreciated, as I do post content just like this all of the time. Sit back, do whatever it is that you do to relax. Enjoy the 2 hours of uninterrupted horror stories right after the ad break after this intro. There won't be any more after that one. And as always, I hope you all have a great night. The efficiency of small spaces was the selling point. The agent, a woman with teeth too perfect for her face, had called it cozy, intimate, a cocoon for the modern urbanite. What she meant, what I understood in the bone-deep way one understands the subtext of a rental agreement, was that it was cheap. So cheap it felt like a crime, a converted textile mill. The apartment was a single, open-plan box. The bathroom, a modest cube of tile and chrome, was the only room with a proper door. Everything else was a flow, a seamless continuity of concrete floor, exposed brick, and drywall painted the color of old dishwater. The building was steel and concrete, a monument to brutalist efficiency. It was also, all things considered, fairly silent most of the time. No creaks, no groans, no settling sighs of an old house. The only intrusion was the distant, rhythmic thrum of the HVAC, a sound so constant it became a sort of auditory wallpaper. The first anomaly was the dresser, a simple IKEA melm. It was my only concession to traditional furniture in the otherwise minimalist space. I noticed it on a Tuesday. I'm a creature of habit. When I vacuum, I push the dresser almost exactly 2 inches from the wall to get the wand behind it, and then I return it to its place, flush against the paint. But on this Tuesday, it was 4 inches out. I blinked, pushed it back, figured I'd been distracted, but the next week it was 4 out again, and the week after, it was never more than that. A precise, maddening, consistent amount, as if something was expanding and contracting behind the drywall, pushing it out with a slow, patient pressure. The other sign was the crawl space, a square of plasterboard in the ceiling of the walk-in closet, barely big enough for a child, marked with a simple, recessed pull ring. The building inspector had called it a plumbing access, though the pipes for the unit were clearly routed along the opposite wall. It was an orphan space, an architectural afterthought. I'd pulled on it once, out of curiosity. It didn't budge. A month later, I noticed the ring was greasy, a dark, slick residue that transferred to my fingertips, smelling faintly of machinery and sour sweat. It wasn't oil, it was thicker, more organic, like the lube from a bicycle chain, but with a faint, coppery tang. One night, I went into the bathroom to take a shower and noticed pretty quickly that the small 10-inch transom window above the shower was hinged open. This wasn't too alarming, as I, on occasion, propped it open after taking a shower. Maybe I had forgotten to close it. Then came the sound. It wasn't a ghostly moan or a spectral footstep. It was the wet, muffled percussion of something being forced past its natural limit. The sound of someone cracking their knuckles, but slower, deeper, and with a fleshy, cartilaginous resistance. I'd hear it in the dead of night, a soft pop, pop, pop from the direction of the ceiling, or I'd catch it while watching a movie, a faint series of clicks from within the wall behind the television. I called my landlord, who quickly brushed it off as the pipes, but it was the sound of a body refusing its own shape, a sound that made the ligaments in my own knees ache in its sympathy. I started to sleep less. The efficiency of the space now felt less like a feature, and more like a trap. The bruises appeared on my right forearm and both shins. They weren't the mottled, chaotic marks of a clumsy bump. They were symmetrical, perfectly oval, about the size of a thumb, a deep, sickly purple that faded to a bilious yellow. My doctor, a harried woman with a distracted smile, called them pressure contusions. Like someone rested a heavy, narrow object on you for an extended period, she'd said, tapping her pen against my chart. In your sleep, perhaps. I didn't have any heavy, narrow objects. I had a bed, a duvet, and the suffocating proximity of the walls. The bruises were the shape of pressure points, the precise spots a hand or feet might rest to anchor a body while it leaned over another, sleeping body in the dark. The realization was so repulsive it felt like a physical blow. I was being handled in my sleep. I started sleeping with a knife next to me. I started leaving markers. A single strand of hair laid carefully across the seam of the crawlspace door. A dime balanced on its edge against the baseboard of the living room wall. The hair would be gone. The dime, inevitably, on the floor. The evidence was microscopic, deniable. A draft, a vibration, anything but the logical, screaming conclusion that was beginning to form in the back of my mind. My paranoia became a religion. I cleaned obsessively, not for hygiene, but for intelligence. I was dusting the radiator, a hulking cast iron relic from the building's factory days, when my fingers brushed against something tucked behind it. Not a dust bunny, not a dead insect. A piece of paper. My hands shook as I worked it free. It was a photograph, low resolution and muddy, printed on heavy cardstock. But I swear it was me. It was just blurry enough to be deniable, but I wouldn't believe anything else. Through the dark fuzz, I could just barely see myself asleep in my bed. The angle was high. Looking down from above my bed, I tilted my head back, tracing the line of sight with my own eyes. It came from the ventilation grate, an 8 by 10-inch metal grill set flush with the ceiling. Its slats too narrow to even fit a hand through, and the picture was a clear shot, as though this person somehow removed the grill. I called the police. They arrived 5 minutes later. "I'm not doubting you, ma'am," the officer said. He was young, with a patient, practiced calm that was more infuriating than disbelief. "But there are no signs of forced entry. Nothing wrong with your door. No pry marks on the crawl space. No fingerprints on the radiator." "Because he doesn't use a door," I said, the words tasting like bile in my throat. I was pacing the small space of my apartment, feeling like a specimen under glass. The officer exchanged a look with his partner. It was a look I'd seen before. The look you give the person who is seeing things. The person who is one bad night away from a 5150 hold. "We'll increase patrols in the area," the officer said, the finality in his tone a clear dismissal. After they left, I locked the door. I pushed a chair under the handle, a token barrier against an enemy who didn't believe in doors, as a small comfort. I sat on my bed and stared at the ceiling. I wanted to call my family. I wanted to leave, but give some issues I don't want to mention. I didn't have that option. A few nights later, I was half drunk on cheap whiskey, the bottle sweating on my nightstand. I was listening. The building was so quiet tonight. The HVAC, the background noise that had become my anchor, was silent. I listened for the clicking, for the wet, muffled pops. There was nothing. The silence was worse. It was the silence of something holding its breath. I had to get out, just for a few minutes. I pulled on my shoes, the movement feeling clumsy and loud in the stillness. I turned off the lights. The building hallway was a tomb of concrete and echoing footsteps. The heavy steel door of the building groaned shut behind me, and I felt a pang of something that was almost relief. The night air was cool on my face. I just needed to walk around the block to feel open space. I was gone for 10 minutes, 15 tops. As I started walking back, I began feeling a dreadful pit form in my stomach. For what reason other than maybe supernatural premonition, I didn't know. My heart started pounding a frantic, arrhythmic beat against my ribs as I approached the door. I turned the lock. The door swung open into the dark. The apartment was just as I'd left it. Almost. The light in the kitchen was on, a single bare bulb over the sink, casting a jaundiced, sterile glow. I never left that light on. My breath hitched in my throat. I was frozen in the doorway, my hand still on the knob. The apartment was silent, but it wasn't the empty silence of before. This was a heavy, anticipating silence, the silence of a predator lying in wait. My eyes darted around the room. Everything was in its right place. The bed was unmade, just as I'd left it. The dresser was flush against the wall, but the kitchen light was on. I took a step inside, my sneakers squeaking on the concrete floor. I needed a weapon. I needed to get to the kitchen. My kitchen knife block was on the counter, right next to the sink. I crept forward, each step a deliberate, nerve-wracking calculation. I could see the knife block now, the chef's knife, its dark wooden handle a beacon of hope. I was almost there. My eyes scanned the room looking for anything out of place. And that's when I saw it. The kick plate under the kitchen cabinets, the thin strip of wood that covered the space between the bottom of the cabinets and the floor. There were scuff marks leading into the darkness. It was ajar, not by much, just a sliver, a 4-inch gap of darkness that hadn't been there when I left. I stopped dead. My blood ran cold. I couldn't breathe. My eyes were locked on that gap, that impossible, narrow gap, a space too small for anything bigger than a small animal, let alone a grown man. I held my breath. I listened. And then I saw it. A hand. It had unnaturally long, spidery fingers, each one tipped with a grime-encrusted nail. The skin was pale, almost translucent, stretched taut over delicate bones. It moved with a strange, twitchy deliberateness akin to a bastardized claymation figure. It slid out from the gap, its palm flat against the floor. Then another hand joined it. They pushed against the floor, and with a series of sickening, rhythmic thuds, something began to emerge. It wasn't a monster. It was worse. A man. He poured himself out from the darkness, a fluid, impossible shape. He was gaunt, middle-aged, in a sweat-stained undershirt and threadbare pants. His collarbones seemed to overlap, and his hips rotated at an angle that defied anatomy. He was a human origami, a mockery of the human form. I watched in stunned, horrified silence as he unfolded himself, the wet, muffled pops I'd heard for weeks now happening in real time, right before my eyes. He saw me. His eyes, sunk deep in their sockets with a glazed-over yellow shine, widened in terror. He was terrified of being caught. I screamed, a raw, guttural sound that tore from my throat. I lunged for the knife block, my fingers closing around the handle of the chef's knife. He scrambled away, a panicked, disjointed gait that was agonizing to watch. He made some sound. Not a scream, but something more carnal and animalistic. He moved with a terrifying, boneless speed. a scuttling motion that was all wrong for a man of his size. He was a spider, a cockroach, a thing that belonged in the cracks and crevices. He didn't run for the door, he ran for the bathroom. I followed, the knife held in front of me like a talisman. He was in the bathroom, a room so small I could touch all four walls at once. I saw him lunge for the window above the shower, jumping off the shower bench. I thought he'd get stuck. I prayed he'd get stuck. But he didn't. He had practiced this. With a visceral thwack that echoed in the small room, he dislocated his own shoulders. He didn't even flinch. He contorted his torso, his head lolling at an unnatural angle, and slid through the opening like a snake into a hole. He was gone. I stood there, shaking, the knife hanging limply from my hand. I looked at the window, at the small dark opening that had just swallowed a man. I could see the alleyway outside, the brick wall of the neighboring building. There was no sign of him. I sat in the corner of my apartment, the knife clutched in my hand, my back against the wall. I watched the door. I watched the windows. I watched the crawl space. I watched the kick plate. I listened for the clicking, for the wet, muffled pops. There was nothing. The apartment was silent. Empty. I called the police again. They took a report. They looked at the window. They looked at the kick plate. They looked at me with a mixture of pity and suspicion. They didn't believe me. Not really. How could they? I barely believed it myself. That night, I quickly gathered my things and rented a hotel. 2 weeks later, I got a call. A detective. He said they had him. They had arrested a man in a neighboring town. He'd been found hiding in the insulation of a local elementary school. They'd caught him because a janitor had heard a strange clicking sound coming from the ceiling. His name was Reuben Cook, a 44-year-old former tunnel rat from a specialized demolition crew, a man with a rare connective tissue disorder, a disorder that made his joints hyperflexible, his skin unnaturally elastic, a man who could fold himself into spaces no human should ever be able to occupy. The detective, a man with a tired, world-weary voice, told me about Cook's history. He was a commensal predator, a parasite. He would live in the dead spaces of apartments for months, eating scraps, watching tenants, and God only knows what else. His file was a litany of disturbing escalations. He was previously in prison for folding himself into the trunk of a woman's car and waiting 3 days for her to drive to a secluded location. He was also linked to a case 3 years ago where, after nestling into an apartment, he killed the tenant because they'd tried to install a shelf that would have blocked his hiding spot. I felt a strange, cold detachment as the detective spoke, a sense of relief mixed with a lingering, gnawing dread. He was caught. The nightmare was over, but then the detective said something that sent a chill down my spine. "We found Cook's kit in the walls of your building," he said. "Kit?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "It wasn't just a sleeping bag," the detective said. "We found some wooden boxes. The smallest box, barely 12 inches square, contained a collection of your personal items, a toothbrush, strands of your hair, and a spare key." I felt the blood drain from my face. My spare key? I'd lost it months ago. I'd torn my apartment apart looking for it. I'd even had the locks changed. A useless, hollow gesture. He'd had the key all along. He could have come and gone as he pleased. But he didn't. He chose to stay in the walls. He chose to be a ghost. Even more, I wondered if he took my hair when I was asleep and most vulnerable. Had that been the reason for my bruises? His strange desire to collect my hair. And why my toothbrush? The medical exam on Cook was strange, the detective continued, his voice dropping to a low, confidential tone. He didn't just have a condition. He had surgically removed his own floating ribs and shaved down his pelvic bone. He didn't want to be a man anymore. He wanted to be a shape, and he's been in your walls since the day you signed the lease. The lease. The cheap, too good to be true lease. The one I signed in a hurry. The one I didn't read as carefully as I should have. The one that had bound me to this place, this prison, for a year. A year of being watched. A year of being a specimen in a cage I didn't even know I was in. I hung up the phone without saying goodbye. I couldn't breathe. The hotel room, with its generic art and beige carpet, felt like it was closing in on me. I'm in a new house now. Though small, it had a wide open floor plan with no crawl spaces. No attic, no basement. Just space. Empty, blessed space. I have a security system. I have a puppy. I have a therapist. I have everything a person is supposed to have to feel safe. But it's not enough. My friends haven't helped much. They began giving him names as if it were all a joke. Flat Stanley, one joked at a dinner party, eliciting a wave of laughter. Another called him the Origami Man. That one stuck with me and permeated my mind more and more each day. I know they mean well, but they can't understand. The memory is a parasite, burrowing deeper into my brain with each passing day. I can't sleep without the lights on. I can't take a shower without the bathroom door locked and 911 on speed dial. I can't be without a weapon by my side. I can't walk past a ventilation grate without feeling a phantom pressure on my skin. I feel an itch on my scalp, a ghostly sensation of a lock of hair being pulled. I can still smell the sour, coppery tang of the grease on the crawlspace pull ring. Last night, I heard the house settle. A soft groan from the floorboards. A gentle creak from the ceiling. I was out of bed in an instant, my heart pounding in my chest. I grabbed a ruler from my desk and started measuring. The gap under the front door, the space between the floor and the baseboards, the clearance under the kitchen cabinets. I measured everything, my hands shaking, my breath catching in my throat. The rational part of my brain knew it was just the house, just the normal sounds of a structure adjusting to the temperature and humidity. But the other part of my brain, the part that had been rewired by Cook, knew better. It knew that a man doesn't need a door to enter a room. It knew that a man doesn't need lots of space to exist. It knew that the world was full of cracks and crevices, of dead spaces and forgotten corners. It knew that, even if it was small, there was a chance prison bars couldn't contain an inhuman monster that could bend into any shape, and I couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere, in some forgotten corner of this new house, a man was practicing his craft, folding himself into smaller and smaller shapes. Waiting. I still have nightmares. I still wake up in a cold sweat, my hands flying to my shins, my arms checking for bruises. I still hear the clicking, the wet, muffled pops from blurry glances. I still see the gaunt face, the sunken yellow eyes, the unnaturally thin frame. The detective's words echo in my mind, a relentless, haunting refrain. He didn't want to be a man anymore. He wanted to be a shape. A shape that could slip through the cracks, a shape that could hide in plain sight, a shape that could be anywhere and everywhere. I'm at the kitchen table now, the morning sun streaming through the window. The ruler is still on the table. I've been measuring all morning. I measured them all. I wrote them down in a notebook. I'm measuring them again tonight, and tomorrow night, and the night after that, Because I know with a certainty that curdles in my gut that Reuben Cook had a reason to watch me and keep me alive for so long, even if I didn't know what the reason was, and I don't believe he would give up on me so easily. So every time I hear a floorboard creak, every time I feel a draft from under a door, I find myself wondering the same thing. Wondering, with a cold, sickening dread, just how much space a man truly needs to fit. I've always been a creature of habit. Wake up at 5:30 a.m., brew a pot of black coffee strong enough to strip paint, and head out to whatever dead-end job pays the bills. For the past 6 months, that job has been at Oceanic Delicacies, a sprawling warehouse on the outskirts of Port Haven, a foggy coastal town in Maine where the air always smells like salt and decay. The gig? Quality control tester for shrimp. Yeah, you heard that right. My job is to eat shrimp. Or at least, what I thought was shrimp. It started innocently enough. I saw the ad on a job board online. No experience necessary. Competitive pay. Must have a strong stomach and no seafood allergies. I figured why not? I've been laid off from my last position at a cannery. Something about automation replacing human hands, and my savings were dwindling faster than the tide recedes. The interview was a joke. A quick chat with a bored HR rep named Marlene, who handed me a form and a pen. "Sign here and you're in," she said. Her eyes glazed like she'd repeated the line 1,000 times. The warehouse was massive, a labyrinth of conveyor belts, humming freezers, and the constant clatter of machinery. My station was in a sterile white room at the back, isolated from the main floor. It was called the tasting lab, but it felt more like a clinical exam room. Fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, a metal table with a stool, and a one-way mirror on the wall that I swore someone was always watching from behind. Every day, I'd clock in, don a hairnet and gloves, and wait for the samples. The process was simple. A slot in the wall would open, and a tray would slide out with 10 to 15 shrimp, peeled and deveined, sometimes raw, sometimes cooked in various seasonings. I'd eat them one by one, noting texture, flavor, freshness on a digital tablet. Too salty? Mark it. Rubbery? Flag it. Off-putting aftertaste? Report it. Then the tray would retract and another would appear. 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. It was monotonous, but the pay was $25 an hour, plus benefits. In Port Haven, that was a king's ransom. At first I loved it. Shrimp had always been a guilty pleasure. Cocktail shrimp at parties, shrimp scampi on date nights back when I had those. The samples were premium, plump, juicy, with that briny snap you only get from fresh catch. I'd chew slowly, savoring the burst of ocean flavor, the subtle sweetness beneath the salt. My notes were glowing, excellent firmness, perfect balance of umami, no fishy undertone. I even started dreaming about shrimp, endless platters floating in a sea of cocktail sauce. But around week 3, things got weird. It started with the textures. One batch felt off, like the meat was too fibrous, almost stringy, as if threads of something tougher were woven in. I noted it, slightly chewy, possible overprocessing. The next day, another tray came with shrimp that wiggled faintly when I picked them up. I blinked thinking it was a trick of the light, but no, tiny spasms, like they weren't quite dead. Residual nerve activity, question mark. I typed, my fingers hesitating. In the cannery days, I'd seen fish twitch post-mortem, but shrimp? They were supposed to be inert. I mentioned it to Marlene during my weekly check-in. She laughed it off, her voice tinny over the intercom. Oh, that's just the new sourcing. We're testing deep-sea varieties. Fresher than fresh. Keeps the flavor locked in. I nodded, but a seed of doubt planted itself. Deep-sea shrimp. I'd never heard of such a thing being commercially viable. Port Haven's waters were shallow, battered by storms, not the abyssal depths. As weeks turned to months, the anomalies piled up. Some shrimp had an iridescent sheen, like oil on water, shifting colors under the lights, blue to green to purple. Others tasted metallic, a coppery tang that lingered on my tongue for hours. I started getting headaches after shifts, pounding migraines that blurred my vision. At home, I'd collapse on my couch, staring at the ceiling, feeling like something was crawling under my skin. One night, after a particularly odd batch, shrimp that popped like caviar when bitten, releasing a viscous fluid, I dreamed vividly. I was underwater, in a vast, dark ocean trench. Bioluminescent shapes darted around me. Not fish, but elongated things with too many segments. Glowing eyes clustered in rows. They pulsed with light, beckoning. I reached out and one latched onto my hand, its mouth parts unfolding like petals. I woke up gasping, my palm itching where nothing was there. The next shift, the trays came faster, no breaks between them. I'd barely finished logging one batch before another slid out. The shrimp were larger now, almost prawn-sized, with veins that pulsed faintly under the translucent flesh. I bit into one, and it squirted, warm, not cold like it should be. The flavor was richer, almost creamy with an undercurrent of something earthy, like soil after rain mixed with blood. I flagged it. Unusual temperature. Sample warm upon arrival. Flavor profile altered. No response from the intercom. Usually, Marlene or someone would chime in with excuses. Silence. My body had started to change. I noticed it in the mirror one morning. My skin looked paler, veins more prominent, especially around my neck and wrists. Bluish lines threading under the surface. I itched constantly, scratching until I bled. The headaches evolved into something worse. Whispers, faint at first, like static in my ears, words I couldn't make out, bubbling up from somewhere deep. At work, the one-way mirror seemed to fog sometimes, as if breath was on the other side. I'd catch glimpses of movement in the reflection, shadows shifting when I wasn't looking directly. The shrimp, God, the shrimp, started looking different, not just in texture or taste, but shape. Some had extra ridges along the tail, tiny protrusions like nascent limbs. Others had what looked like eye spots, dark dots that followed me as I lifted them to my mouth. I tried to quit once, went to Marlene's office after a shift, my tablet clutched in shaking hands. "This isn't right," I said. "The samples, they're not normal shrimp." She smiled, that same glazed expression. "Nonsense, you're our best tester. Top scores every week. Here's a bonus." She slid an envelope across the desk. $500 cash. I took it. Bills don't pay themselves. That night, the itching intensified. In the shower, I scratched my forearm raw, and something moved beneath the skin. A ripple, like a worm burrowing. I stared, water cascading over me, convinced it was a hallucination. But no, it happened again. A small bulge traveling up my arm, then vanishing. The dreams grew more frequent. Always the trench, the glowing creatures. But now they spoke, not with voices, but impressions. Hunger, ancient patience. A promise of belonging. I'd wake with salt crust on my lips, even though I lived miles from the shore. The trays never stopped. I'd eat hundreds a day, my stomach distending painfully, but I never felt full. The shrimp were alive now, unmistakably. They'd curl when touched, antenna, actual antenna twitching. Some tried to escape the tray, scuttling toward the edge. I'd pin them with a fork, force them down. The taste was exquisite agony, sweet decay, electric vitality surging through me. My notes became erratic. Sample exhibits motility. Recommend halt. Flavor induces euphoria. Potential contaminant. Eyes present. Multiple. Still, silence from the intercom. I started sneaking samples home, wrapped in napkins, hidden in my lunch bag, under my kitchen light, magnified with a cheap lupe I'd bought online. The truth stared back. They weren't shrimp. Segmented bodies, jointed legs folded tight, mandibles tucked beneath. Larval forms, perhaps, of something much larger. Deep sea horrors, harvested from trenches no sub should reach. I searched online late at night, forums about cryptic marine life, leaked documents from oceanographic expeditions, whispers of benthic anomalies, caught in trawls of the continental shelf, things that mimicked commercial species to infiltrate supply chains, parasites that rewrote hosts from within. The itching spread everywhere, my back, my scalp, between my toes. In the mirror, my eyes had changed, pupils slightly elongated, irises flecked with that same iridescence. One shift, the plot opened, but no tray came. Instead, a voice, finally, from the intercom. Not Marlene's. Deeper, resonant, like pressure waves in water. You've adapted well. Integration phase complete. The lights dimmed, the one-way mirror cleaned, revealing not a observation room, but darkness, an abyss, lit by faint bioluminescence. Shapes moved beyond, massive, segmented, familiar. I looked down at my hands, the skin split painlessly, peeling back like a shell. Beneath, something pale and jointed flexed. Legs. Feelers. The tray arrived then, empty, an invitation. I understood. My job wasn't to test shrimp. It was to become the vessel, to carry them inland. Spread the brood. The whispers clarified. We are the tide that returns. You are the bridge. I stepped toward the slot. It widened, accommodating. The air grew cold, briny. As I crossed the threshold into the wet dark beyond the wall, I felt the last of the old me slough away. Hunger remained, the eternal, patient hunger. Back in the lab, a new stool waited, a new tablet. Soon, another applicant would sign the form. I'm laying on this plate, waiting for them. This all began 3 weeks ago, after my almost year-long relationship with my ex ended. Things were amazing with Lily at first. She was hot, way out of my league, but what really made me fall for her was how well we meshed together, how seamlessly we understood each other. She met my every need, big or small. I'd have only just put my fork down to reach for the tomato sauce, and she'd already be passing it to me. I'd sink onto the couch, in the mood for a good horror movie, and before I could suggest the idea, she'd smile and say, "This feels like a horror movie night." I'd wake up from some pretty heated dreams, and she'd already be swinging her leg over me, ready to start the morning exactly how I imagined it. So after 5 months, I made the very smart, not at all too soon decision of asking her to move in with me. It was amazing, at first. She was the first girl I'd ever met who didn't care if I played video games for hours, because she'd just sit beside me the whole time watching me play. She didn't care what I did, as long as I was within reach. Always within reach. Her nails would trail circles on the back of my neck, glide along my arms, or she'd just rest her foot on top of mine. She constantly wanted me in touching distance. I loved it at first. I knew we were probably getting a bit too attached to each other. I stopped seeing my friends as much. I called my family less. Then one day after work, the guys invited me to the pub. It made me realize it had been way too long since I hung out with them. I didn't see the problem and texted Lily to let her know I'd be home late. Just a few pints. There was a skimpy at the bar, so I didn't stay long. I didn't even look at her. I averted my eyes out of respect for Lily. I was a good guy, a good boyfriend. When I got home, Lily was livid. "You went to a skimpy's bar?" There wasn't a bar in our rural mining town without skimpies, and I barely even stayed an hour, but I didn't argue. I felt guilty at the hurt in her eyes as she sobbed into my chest. I didn't realize she'd feel so hurt by it, but of course she would. I never should have gone. So I stopped going out to the pub with the guys. I thought it was the skimpies that were the problem. So, when the guys invited me out to play golf, I thought it'd be no big deal. It was completely innocent. Wrong. She was livid at me again. "You don't even like golf," she cried out. "I just wanted to see my mates," I said carefully. "So you'd rather spend time with them than me?" "Babe." I was shocked seeing this insecure side of her I'd never seen before, and definitely a little put off. Was she being serious? "I am allowed to see my mates, right?" I said it slowly, hoping it'd make her understand how ridiculous she was being. And it did. She sighed, her anger dissipating, replaced by the sort of sadness that reminded me of a kicked puppy. It made my stomach clench in guilt. "I'm sorry. I just missed you," she said. After that, she stopped being livid whenever I went out without her. Instead, she punished me quietly. If I came home from playing pool at a mate's house, she'd barely look at me, barely speak. I'd feel sick with guilt even though I knew I'd done nothing wrong. The breaking point was lunch with my mom. I got home, and she gave me the exact same attitude she always did, acting all cold and distant and miserable, which in turn made me miserable. I'd had enough. I was sick of it. "Are you serious, Lily? You're seriously going to make me feel bad about seeing my own mother, the woman who gave birth to me?" "I'm sorry," she said, tears in her eyes. "I just get jealous." "Of my mom? That's insane." She stepped closer. "Well, maybe. Maybe I just want you all to myself. Is that really so bad?" She murmured softly. For a moment, I was in a trance, forgetting why I was mad in the first place as she stared up at me from under her lashes. Her soft lips pressed into a little pout. I knew if she touched me, I'd cave, so I stepped back. "I don't think I can do this anymore," I said quietly, refusing to meet her eyes. If I did, I wouldn't be able to say it. "I think we need a break." "A break?" she scoffed. "Or a break up?" I didn't answer. "Let me make the decision for you," she said. "Good luck finding anyone else who understands you like I do." She packed her things and left. I stayed silent even though one word from me would have stopped her. even though I wanted to stop her. This was for the best, for me and for her. She was too attached. It wasn't healthy for either of us. The weekend was hell. I'd sit in front of my console, staring at the loading screen, remembering her fingers in my hair, her constant touch, her steady, comforting presence. And then the house would feel unbearably empty. When I went back to work, everyone could tell I was in a foul mood. At the time, I didn't notice anything strange about that day. Looking back now, I don't know how I missed it. "Everything all right, mate? You and your missus have a fight?" Greg, my older manager, asked. He was a good bloke. Always had been. "I messed it all up," I mumbled without thinking. It was the only sentence my brain seemed capable of forming. "Oh, you're both doing well then? That's great, mate. Must just be a bit hungover, hey?" Greg said with a wink. I frowned at him, but I was too wrapped up in my own head to notice how little sense his response made. It wasn't until the next shift that I really started paying attention. "Jerry and the boys are meeting at the pub later. Joining us, Harry?" Lachlan asked. I blinked. My first instinct was to say no, that I wasn't in the mood. Then I realized there was nothing stopping me anymore. No one waiting at home, and a pint with the boys sounded better than going back to my empty apartment, where everything reminded me of her. "Yeah, sure," I said. "Ah, bummer. The missus still has a problem with those skimpies, does she? You really should tell her they've got nothing on her, and her banging body." Lachlan chuckled. "Don't talk about her like that," I snapped. Then I frowned, the words catching up to me. "I said I'll come. We broke up. Didn't Greg tell you?" "She don't get what she's doing with a guy like you." "You're what, a 4? Nah, like a 3.5. Lily is a solid 10. I stared at him, annoyed as hell, but more confused than anything. Why wasn't he listening? "We broke up," I said slowly. "Honestly, I get why you don't hang out with the lads anymore. If I had a woman like that waiting for me in my bed, you boys would never see me again." Lachlan laughed. I just looked at him, wondering if he was deliberately messing with me, and briefly imagining my fist connecting with his acne-scarred face. "Just shut the hell up," I said. "Tell her hi from me later on," he smirked. "Tell her I could show her what a real man is." I was seconds away from punching him when Greg called us over. That night, I joined the lads at the bar. I still caught myself averting my eyes from the skimpy, even though I had no reason to anymore. It felt wrong, like muscle memory I couldn't shake, and irritatingly, Lachlan was right. No one compared to Lily. The boys looked genuinely shocked when they saw me. "What are you doing here, mate? Isn't it you and your missus' anniversary today?" Greg asked. It was, 1 year exactly, but we weren't together anymore, and I was past exhausted with this. "Guys, we broke up. Are you messing with me or something? It isn't funny. It's kinda messed up, actually." "You just left her at the house? That's low, bro. Who would leave a girl like that at home?" "We broke up." It was pointless. They were purposely ignoring me, and I couldn't understand why. For the next half hour, they kept shooting me weird, dirty looks. Judgmental ones. Lachlan just smirked. Like this meant it was finally his chance with Lily. But Lily wasn't here. Why did they think she was still around? What the hell was wrong with them? "Your pale ale," the waitress said, setting a beer in front of me. I ordered a Guinness. I frowned. Normally, I'd just accept it. I hated making a fuss, but between the boys and the constant misunderstandings, something in me snapped. "Yes, this is your pale ale," she said slowly, like I was stupid. "I know, but I ordered a Guinness." "Sir, this is a pale ale," she said again, irritation creeping into her voice. "I know." I was seething. Why did she look annoyed? I ordered a Guinness. I already told you, this is your pale ale, she snapped, crossing her arms before storming off. I stared after her, completely disoriented. What the hell is her problem? I asked. No one answered. I turned back to the boys, searching their faces for anything that'd back me up, but they were all glaring at me. What's the matter with you? Greg demanded. Have you gone mad? My chest tightened. Was I going mad? Or had everyone else? I'm sorry, I said instead. I've been a mess since Lily left me, alright? You didn't even buy her roses? Greg's eyebrows shot up. On your anniversary? Go back home to your missus, mate. Go make things right. What the hell? I stood up, my head pounding, and left the bar. My thoughts were spiraling. What is going on? At home, I called my mom. I needed to be grounded. I needed something familiar. Her voice had always been able to pull me back when everything else felt wrong. Hey Mom, I really need someone to talk to, I said. I'm good, honey. What about yourself? She replied. The answer immediately put me on edge. It didn't match what I'd just said at all. Still, I told myself she hadn't heard me properly. Mom's hearing wasn't always the best. Not great, honestly. Lily and I broke up a few days ago. My throat tightened as I said it. Tears stung my eyes. The first time I'd felt close to crying since she left. Talking to my mom always did that, like I could finally let my guard down. Did she like the flowers? What flowers did you get her? I hope you cooked her a good dinner, too. You've got a good one there, Harry, Mom said cheerfully. My body went cold. No, there was no way she was ignoring me, too. My mom wouldn't do that. She'd never be that cruel. I tried again, slower this time. Mom, we broke up. Lily and I broke up. That's wonderful. I'm so happy you found such a beautiful relationship. You better put a ring on it soon. She laughed. I hurled my phone across the room. My chest rose and fell as I paced. Why didn't anyone understand what I was saying? Lily's voice echoed in my head. Good luck finding anyone else who understands you like I do. My thoughts raced. It was ridiculous. Impossible, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was somehow her doing. Had she told the boys to mess with me, to make me feel crazy as some kind of punishment? I was sure most of them would do anything if she smiled at them. But my mom, too? That didn't make sense. Needing answers, I rushed back to my phone, relieved to see it hadn't cracked. The call was still connected. Harry, are you there? Yeah, I've got to go, Mom. Love you, I said. Yes, I am looking forward to lunch next week. She replied pleasantly. Even that didn't line up with what I'd said. I ended the call with a shaky breath and dialed Lily's number, only hesitating for a moment. She picked up on the first ring, just like she always used to. Lily had always been within reach, always there when I needed her. Harry? Her voice was soft, sad. My chest tightened instantly. I'd missed her voice more than I wanted to admit. I forced myself to stay focused. Did you tell everyone to mess with me? Mess with you? She repeated. Relief flooded through me so sharply it almost made me dizzy. For the first time in days, someone had responded in a way that actually made sense. She wasn't ignoring me. She wasn't twisting my words. She was listening. She was understanding me. Harry, what are you talking about? I hesitated, suddenly aware of how insane I sounded. Still, I couldn't let it go. It's just, everyone is ignoring me. They're not listening to a thing I'm saying. They're making me feel crazy, and I remember the last thing you said to me was, good luck finding anyone else who understands me like I do. She went quiet. The silence stretched unbearably. My heart hammered in my chest. I said that because I was hurt, she said finally, her voice low. Guilt stabbed straight through me. I'd never wanted to hurt her. That had never been my intention. "What do you mean everyone is ignoring you?" she asked. She sounded genuinely confused, concerned even. I dragged a hand down my face. "It's like they're pranking me. I'll say one thing, and they'll respond with something that makes no sense. I can't get through to anyone." Saying it out loud only made it feel worse, unreal, like I was describing someone else's breakdown. "I understand," she said. My head snapped up. "You do?" "Yeah, since coming back to live with my parents, seeing my friends again, I don't know. It's like no one's on the same wavelength as me. I can't connect with anyone either, Harry," she said quietly. "Not since you." My chest ached. This wasn't what I meant, was it? "I miss you." The words tumbled from my mouth before I could stop them. They felt right to say. I did miss her. "I miss you too, but you're right. This is for the best. When I moved out there, all I had was you. I guess I got pretty attached. It was hard to make friends. I was jealous you had so many people, and all I had was you." She sighed, and the sound twisted something deep in me. I remembered those moments clearly now. Her jealousy, her insecurity. I'd always brushed it off, but I'd lived in this town my whole life. She'd left everything behind for me. Family, friends, her entire support system. Of course she'd clung to me. Why had that ever felt like a problem? Why hadn't I just brought her along more, instead of insisting on doing my own thing? The more I thought about it, the less sense our breakup made. The unease I'd felt around her dissolved, replaced by regret, so sharp it made my chest hurt. "I want you back, Lily. I'm so sorry for neglecting your feelings. I was a shit boyfriend," I said. "I want you back too." Hope surged through me, but I think we need a little more space. It's nice being around friends and family again. I am remembering who I was before you. Something inside me cracked. I didn't want her to remember who she was before me. I didn't want her to be okay without me. I wasn't okay without her. "Give it another week, then I'll come visit and see if we still have something," she suggested. The thought of another week without her made my chest ache, but I swallowed it down. Okay. That whole week, the only thing keeping me sane was knowing I'd see her again soon. The insanity never stopped. People continued misunderstanding every word I said. Everyone still acted like Lily and I were together, like nothing was wrong. I'd order a chicken parmy at a restaurant and get spaghetti instead. And then finally, she came back. I picked her up from the train station and scooped her into my arms. She was just as stunning as ever, smelling amazing despite being in a stuffy train for 7 hours. Her laughter was like music in my ears. I'd never been more ecstatic in my life. We spent most of the evening in bed, and when we were physically exhausted, I rolled over to look at her and said, "I'm never letting you out of my sight again." "Finally, you know how I feel," she smiled, rolling her eyes. She moved back in. At work, I was in a better mood than I'd been in for 2 weeks. Greg noticed. "Someone's happy." "Yeah," I said, accepting that people were going to misinterpret everything I said these days. I didn't care anymore. I had my beautiful girl back. "I got her back," I said with a happy sigh. Greg frowned. "Who? Lily?" His eyes widened. "Did you two break up?" "Yeah, man." I paused. He understood what I said. He actually replied with something that made sense for once. I narrowed my eyes. "So you were messing with me?" Greg looked at me like I was an idiot. "Messing with you? Man, what are you talking about?" "All those times I told you we'd broken up, you did hear what I said, didn't you?" I accused. "Mate, He paused, furrowing his brows like he was confused now. "Huh, That's weird. What? I scoffed. You did tell us, he said in a sudden, shocked realization. You said it to Jerry 5 times in a row. We broke up. That was when I had decided to just mess with them back a few days ago. I'd stared at Jerry with a flat look and repeated it robotically, and he just chuckled and said, Yeah, I guess the weather is nice today, man. Weird. I swore you were going on about some other thing, Greg said. Wait, you said to me you pooped your pants. I almost laughed. That was also when I was messing with them. I just looked Greg directly in the eye and said, I pooped myself, to see how far he'd take this weird prank. But he just clapped me on the shoulder and said, That's great news, man. I stared at Greg, a cold, uncomfortable feeling washing over me, at the genuine confusion on his face. Dude, we thought you were losing your mind. Why did I think it was normal for you to say, let's go golfing? You hate golfing. You'd never suggest that. What the hell? He stepped back, looking like he wanted to vomit. I feel weird, man, he said. Are you okay? I asked, genuinely concerned. Yeah. He furrowed his brows and gave me a weird look. Let's, get back to work. It stuck with me all afternoon. They had all been genuinely hearing things I wasn't saying. The other guys started understanding me again too. Even they seemed creeped out by something. It's like some voodoo stuff, I heard Jerry mutter to Lachlan. Lachlan almost looked scared when he looked at me now. I didn't let it spoil my mood. I was a little weirded out, sure, but I had my beautiful girl back. Everything felt right again. How was your day? Lily asked when I came home. I hugged her immediately and breathed her in. She was like a drug. Her scent, her warmth, her entire body relaxed. Good, but a lot better now. Over the week, the boys invited me out more than usual. They were persistent, but I refused every time. All I wanted was to be with Lily. I canceled plans with Mom. I wanted to spend every minute with her. I even started thinking about quitting my well-paying job for a remote one so I could stay home. Anything to be surrounded by her. Until one day, the boys cornered me at work. They all looked worried, even Lachlan. Something's happening to you, man, Jerry said. And it's because of Lily. What? I laughed, shaking my head. He stayed serious. What do you even know about her? The question hit me like a punch. What do you mean? I mean, what does she do? Does she work? Where does her family live? How did you meet? Greg asked. My mind went blank. I didn't have answers to any of it, but that wasn't the worst part. A strange part of me, something old and buried, screamed that something was wrong, like a threat hovering just out of sight. She doesn't work, I said. Does she? I wasn't sure. I make more than enough to support us both, I shrugged. Besides, she's easy to provide for, and she catches the train to see her family, so obviously they must live in the city. You don't know where her parents live? Jerry demanded. Have you ever even met them? Of course I had. Had I? My stomach twisted. When did you pick her up from the train? Lachlan suddenly asked. I frowned. Why would he ask that? On Saturday, I said, all their faces drained of color. Seriously, what is wrong with you guys? I asked. The train doesn't run on Saturdays, Harry, Greg said, looking sick again. So, what are you saying? I folded my arms. She's been lying to you, and she's doing something really weird to you, and us. We didn't understand what you were saying for a full week, Harry. Do you know how freaky that is? And now, when we think back on that week, it's like there was an evil presence with us. Something controlling us. Something wrong with that chick. Don't talk about her like that, I spat. How did you meet her, Harry? Greg repeated. I don't know, I snapped. They all looked at each other like I'd just confirmed something for them. You need to get away from her. She's some sort of... Jerry trailed off, like he knew the word he was about to say sounded ridiculous even to him. Screw this. I'm leaving early. I turned away from them. We've never even met her, Harry. I could have sworn we had, but we haven't. Has your mom even met her? I kept walking because I didn't want to admit the truth. I don't know. I was desperate to be back with her. At home, she opened her arms and I melted into them. The guys were saying some weird stuff today. I mumbled into her hair. Just ignore them, baby. They'll never understand what we have. She hummed. I took a few days off work. The boys blew up my phone, but I told them to leave me alone. One night, I was looking for my hoodie. My favorite hoodie. It was cold and I needed it. I wondered where it could be when I noticed, for the first time, the room. It was just a normal room at the end of the hallway, but I'd never seen it before in my life. I blinked. How could I not know there was a whole room in my own apartment? I went inside. It was small, a basic spare room, with a bed, a desk, a wardrobe. But in the middle of the floor, a triangle of candles was laid out, and in the center of it sat my hoodie. My favorite book, the one I'd been missing for months, and my toothbrush, also missing for weeks. I stared at them in shock, stepping closer. Don't touch anything. Come back to bed, baby, her voice said behind me. I turned, and even though unease crept in, I couldn't help but smile at her cute, sleepy face. What is all this? I asked slowly in some sort of haze. She shrugged. My eyes flicked back to the bed, and a strange thought hit me, almost funny. Lily, when you left, I began. Did you ever actually leave? She chuckled. Of course I didn't, Harry. I'd never leave you. You'll always be within my reach. I went back to bed, and now as she sleeps beside me, I'm typing this out on my phone. There's a part of me that knows something is wrong, that I'm under some kind of spell. I can feel the small voice in my head telling me to get out, but it's getting quieter. Maybe the boys are right. Maybe I know they are. But has she really done anything I don't want? She wants me forever. I want her forever. I suppose the only reason I'm writing this at all is because I'm afraid I'll forget I ever felt differently. Because I feel really forgetful these days. And maybe I just want to see what other people think. If a beautiful girl wants me all to herself, every day for the rest of my life, is that really so bad? It's what I want, isn't it? It happened in third period. Xavier, one of the quieter kids in my class, came up to me with a clenched fist and a hand over his mouth. Mr. Thanley? He sputtered out a muffled cry into his palm and held his closed fist up to me. What's up? He unfurled his fist, revealing 4 bloody teeth in his palm. I think I need to go to the nurse. He uncovered his mouth. His front teeth were missing, along with his bottom ones. The lines between his teeth were filled with dark red. Oh my god. I cringed at the sight. Go to the nurse, Xavier. Take my tissues, I told him. I had encountered a few kids having a tooth fall out when I taught 2nd grade. This was my first year teaching high school. Kids shouldn't be losing teeth unless they were getting into fights. Right as I handed him the hall pass, Jayla yelled from across the class, exclaiming that her back tooth came out. Then it was Albert, then Anthony, then Megan, then Sam, until the whole class was losing teeth. They cried but kept wiggling at their teeth. Tiny little taps rung out on each student's desk. I passed the storage of Kleenex boxes around the class, making sure each kid got a few. I tried calling the nurse, but she didn't pick up. I walked to the front of the class and announced, "Everyone stay in here. I'm gonna go get the nurse. I'll be back soon." It seemed like all the other teachers had the same idea. Teachers crowded around in the nurse's empty office, asking about where the nurse went. Others conversing about what happened in their classrooms. Everyone's story was the same. It started with one student, then the rest started losing them. I felt around in my mouth with my tongue, checking each tooth's sturdiness. Strong as ever. The nurse walked back into the office. I talked to the principal. He's going to make an announcement immediately. We've already called 911. The news arrived shortly after the ambulances. Helicopters showed up too. Care flight, I think. Men in big white rubber suits closed off the area. Some of them had weird-looking gadgets. Over the next couple hours, hundreds of kids with gauze stuffed mouths were sent home. Cameras were shoved in the principal's face. Some in mine, too. They all asked the same questions. How many students have been affected? Do you think this could be biological warfare, biological terrorism, chemical runoff in the water system? Are any of the teachers experiencing what the students have? I felt like a deer in the headlights. I was just a teacher. A confused, scared teacher. I got home at about 9. My wife, Mona, greeted me at the front door with a hug. I heard about school today. She stepped back and examined me. Are you okay? Yeah. I didn't want to lie, but it was the easiest option. I couldn't sleep that night. That sound of falling teeth clacking on the desks haunted me. School was canceled for the next 2 weeks. Everyone was talking about it online. Article after article about why and how this could have happened. A town meeting was held a day later. As soon as the superintendent walked on stage, the crowd murmured. A mother in the back screamed, "My son's in the hospital. Are you gonna pay for those bills?" This started a chain of furious parents yelling, asking what we would do for their kids. The superintendent was walked off stage, quickly replaced by a public health official. At this time, we are actively investigating what caused this spontaneous phenomena. We're trying our hardest to get you the answers you deserve. He was met with loud disapproval from the parents. As I left the meeting, I saw one of my students with his parents. It was Xavier. When he spotted me, he looked away immediately, as if he was ashamed that I saw him. I felt horrible for the kid. That night, when I got home and settled into bed, my mind began to wander into all the possibilities. One question ran through my mind, though. Why only the students? As I drifted off to sleep, I was jolted awake by a single loud knock on my front door. I stared at Mona. She was fast asleep. When I opened the door, a brown paper bag laid on my porch. Red tissue paper stuffed inside. A gift from the community. I thought as I lifted the bag, it was heavier than I expected, and it sounded like a Lego box being shaken around. I placed it on my table, and it let out a slunk, like a beanbag being dropped on the ground. I rubbed my eyes and decided I'd open it tomorrow. The next morning I was awoken by the sound of my wife getting ready for work. I rubbed my eyes and sat up against the headboard. "What did you get your class?" Mona asked. In my half-awake daze, this question confused me. "What are you talking about?" "The bag on the table. It says Mr. Stanley's classroom on it," she replied. I got out of bed and walked to the table. Turning the bag around revealed some words I hadn't seen the night before. As clear as day it read, "Mr. Stanley's classroom," in Sharpie, with a little smiley face at the bottom. When I pulled the top layer of tissue paper out of the bag, something went flying out, tapping repeatedly on the hardwood floor. I got on my knees and scanned the floor. I spotted it against the white of the baseboards. I picked it up and examined it closer. A brown tooth. It bounced on the ground as I dropped it, running to yanking the top layer of tissue paper off. Discolored teeth crowded the inside, pushing the walls of the bag. Every teacher in the school received a paper brown bag that night. The teachers with Ring doorbells revealed someone dropping these bags off. The man had on a long black trench coat and sported a bowler hat. His face was covered with sunglasses and white cloth wrapping, like that old Invisible Man movie. The media dubbed him the Tooth Fairy. It wasn't long until a statewide search for this man was held. The district was in outcry. No abnormalities were found in the children's bodies, but the news still spun the story that this Tooth Fairy might have drugged the kids, or somehow used radiation to make them lose their teeth. How he got the teeth from the classrooms? No one knows. None of the cameras in the school caught him in the holes. My mom texted me and sent me the link of me on the news. Look at you, Hollywood star. Crazy stuff. Stay safe. Love you. From Mom. I don't think she really understood the magnitude of what happened, but at least she thinks I'm famous. I clicked on the video, and as soon as I did, there he was. Black trench coat, sunglasses, white face wrapping. As I spoke, stuttering on live news like the idiot I am, he was in the back, helping a young girl replace gauze in her mouth. I showed this to the authorities. There were no records he was at the school. No EMS personnel saw him. No news outlets interviewed him. The only trace of him was through video. The police interviewed the girl that the Tooth Fairy was helping. Her name was Sarah. Sarah told the police that he just walked up to her and started helping her with the gauze. He didn't speak to her, but whispered quietly under his breath as he replaced her gauze. She said it was strange because he kept the used gauze and stuffed it into his pocket. Then he walked off and started helping another kid. The police interviewed every kid at the school. They were all helped by this man. A few weeks later, and the search for the Tooth Fairy died down. Kids started to get full mouth implants. Things started to get better. The town held a night of recognition for the students. Every kid showed up. I saw some sporting a whole new set of pearly whites. They let a few kids speak about the events of that day, and how they got over their pain and overcame the horror. To my surprise, one of them was Xavier. When it was his turn to speak, he held the mic to his mouth and covered the bottom of his face with the other. Before he could speak, someone in the audience stood up. I was in the very back, so I could see exactly who it was, but I recognized the silhouette from anywhere. He walked down the center aisle until he reached the apron of the stage. He stared up at Xavier and lifted his open hand up towards him, gesturing to give him the microphone. Xavier obliged, and the man held it up to his covered face. He whispered something. His hushed voice filled the auditorium. I couldn't tell what he said, but the look on Xavier's face told me what intent those words held. Xavier fell to his knees, grabbing at his face. He crawled to the edge of the stage, and what seemed like black tar oozed from his mouth onto the floor. He let out a blood-curdling scream. Some people in the front row ran up to help him, and so did I. As I ran down the aisle to aid Xavier, I noticed the rest of the kids in the auditorium were struggling as well. Every kid was grabbing at their mouths and crying. It wasn't until I got to Xavier that I realized why. His teeth were growing back. Horrible, jagged thorns ruptured out from his gums. I looked around. All of the kids' mouths were now filled with a pink, inflamed mess and crooked white razors. I just stood there in shock and ran out of the auditorium. I heard more screams come from behind the closed doors. These weren't pain. It was confusion, desperation, parents yelling out for their kids. I didn't see what happened in there, but I quickly found out. They closed down the school after that night. No one knew where they went. We looked for months. Hell, the whole country looked. We didn't know how to grieve on such a scale. 290 kids ran out of the auditorium missing. The Tooth Fairy's pictures and videos were spread everywhere. I saw him online every day for weeks. People in town made up stories about possession, a mass pagan ritual planned by the students. Some said the devil got them. The missing children's posters were rapidly covered with the faces missing pets. I stayed put. My wife had such a great job in town, and I couldn't take that away from her. I think it was good that we stayed, if it meant it would get us even an inch closer to finding those kids. I'd spend every waking minute looking. When the search parties waned, I persisted. I'd go in the morning with a bag of food and my flashlight, hoping we could find even one of them. The town forced itself to move on. The high school had to open back up for the incoming freshmen at the middle school. I started seeing parents in public again. They'd shoot me a wave and a smile, and I'd reply back with the same. The town was healing. It was. I say that because last night, my molars fell out, then my canines, then my front teeth. I called 911, but no one answered. Every line was busy. It seemed like all the other teachers had the same idea. I don't really tell people this because it sounds insane, but this is something my family has lived with for years. My aunt lives alone in my grandparents' old wooden house. The house is quiet in the day, but at night it feels wrong, like the air is heavier. Family members visit her sometimes, but nobody ever stays long. You just don't feel safe there, even if nothing is happening. When I was a kid, I had sleep there whenever there's family gatherings. At night, I would hear her talking from the hallway. At first, I thought she was just praying, but then I realized she was having full conversations, whispering, arguing, sometimes laughing softly, when she would go suddenly quiet, like she was listening to someone answer. Then she would reply again, using words I didn't understand. Not Malay, not English, nothing I recognized. It didn't sound panicked either. It sounded familiar, like this wasn't new to her. I remember hiding under the blanket, sweating, just waiting for morning. I asked my dad once what was wrong with her. He didn't look at me. He just said, a jinn. Before all this, my aunt was normal. Actually, more than normal. She was really smart, top student, talented at drawing. Like, scary good. Everyone thought she would have a great future. She failed her college entrance exam. She took it really hard, rode her bicycle for hours every day to go to cram school. Rain, heat, didn't matter. She tried again. She failed again. After that, she changed completely. She would suddenly get angry and destroy things. Throw plates, smash glass, scream. One time she gathered every photo of herself as a young girl and burned them outside, slowly, calmly, like she was erasing proof she ever existed. The family brought Eustace to do Rugya many times. Some left early. One of them said the thing inside her had already settled in her heart, that it wasn't just attached anymore. Then one night she spoke in a voice that was not hers, lower, slower, very confident. She said there was a keris hidden in the house, and told them exactly where it was, a place nobody remembered. When they checked, it was there, exactly there. The Eustace said it was Shirik. My grandfather took the keris to a river at night and threw it away while praying. He thought that would end everything. It didn't. Later, my great-grandmother admitted something terrible. My great-grandfather had been feeding a jinn for years. Offerings, rituals. He wanted to pass it down to his sons. My grandfather refused, so it went to my aunt instead. They sent her to a mental hospital. Doctors checked her and said she was sane. She told them calmly, "I'm not crazy. The minister wants me. He wants to marry me." Even now, at night, you can hear her whispering prayers, crying, then stopping suddenly like she's listening, then answering back. Old people say during British rule some people made pacts with jinn for protection and power. They didn't understand you can't control something like that. You don't borrow power. You invite something to stay. My grandfather tried to break it by trusting only Allah. But that house is still not quiet at night, and whatever is there sounds like it's been there for a very long time. Edit. Right now, whatever it is seems tied to my aunt. She's old and very sick, and honestly, that's what scares the family. We don't know what happens after. No one knows who it would go to, or if it even follows normal rules. In our belief, these things exist around us all the time. You can't see them with human eyes. But that doesn't mean they aren't there. Senior year of college. My previous roommate graduated and moved back home to save money. I kept dwelling on the idea of a new roommate taking his place. Someone I don't know, sharing my space. The next afternoon, 3 sharp knocks echoed through the apartment. I swung the door open and was met by a young man with dark, greasy hair hanging over his eyes, clutching a single cardboard box to his chest. Hello? Can I help you?" I asked. In a raspy voice, he replied, "I'm your new roommate. Apartment 367, right?" I nodded. "Yeah, man. Come in. I'm Ben. Nice to meet you." He reached out his hand. It trembled as he spoke. "Name's Jackson." I held the door open and ushered him inside. As he passed me, the sharp aroma of bleach flooded my nostrils. I nearly gagged. I showed him around the apartment. "Not much here, but feel free to use my dishes if you need to." He didn't respond. Just nodded silently, his eyes scanning the room, like he was cataloging everything. I attempted to make conversation, but Jackson was like a brick wall. Out of sheer awkwardness, I decided to leave early for work. I said goodbye and told him I'd be home later that night. Jackson raised his hand in a stiff wave and let out the creepiest smile. When he smiled, it didn't reach his eyes, almost like the rest of his face had to catch up. I gathered my things and chalked it up to him being socially awkward. Later that evening, when I arrived home, all the lights were off in the apartment. I assumed Jackson wasn't home. I switched the lights on and swung the fridge door open. Inside were 10 packages of red meat, neatly stacked and tightly wrapped. As I stood there staring, I heard a faint croaking sound coming from Jackson's bedroom. I moved closer to his door. The croaking shifted into scratching. Then, suddenly, the noises intensified. My nerves shot through me. I banged on his door. "Hey man, everything all right?" Everything went silent. 10 seconds passed. Then, in a gargled tone, Jackson hissed, Yes. Just getting dressed." "Okay," I said quickly. "Just checking. I heard some noises." No response. I went back to my room and locked my door. For the first time since moving in, the next morning, Jackson was gone. His door was wide open. I tried to ignore it and went straight to the fridge to grab my eggs. Before I could, I noticed 5 of Jackson's meat packages were missing. I assumed he'd cooked sometime during the night. Still, curiosity gnawed at me. I slowly approached his bedroom. A tangy, metallic smell hit my nose as I peered inside. The room was practically empty, like no one had ever moved in. Except for the cardboard box. It sat unopened on his desk. As I stepped closer, a knock sounded at the front door. I recoiled. The knocking came again. I cracked the door open to see Jackson standing there, with a woman beside him. "Hey, Jackson," I muttered. He rushed inside, the woman following closely behind. "Forgot my keys," he mumbled. "Thank you." His eyes darted towards his bedroom as he shut the door quickly. "This is my sister, Amber," Jackson said. Amber cocked her head to the side and raised her hand in a stiff, unnatural wave. She never spoke. "Nice to meet you," I said softly. "Are you helping Jackson move more stuff in?" Her eyes stayed glazed on me. Jackson hissed. "You didn't go in my room, Ben, right?" I would never intrude," I said quickly. He nodded and pulled Amber into his room. He stared at me the entire time. I left the apartment soon after. That night at work, I told my coworkers everything. Kelly was the most adamant. "Ben, this isn't a joke," she said, gripping my arm. "You're uncomfortable in your own home. This guy's a stranger. Who knows what he does?" I nodded. "Did you hear about the student who went missing?" she added. My stomach dropped. "Who?" "I don't remember his name," she said. "But I heard the FBI's involved. Just trust your gut." The next morning, I decided I'd request a roommate change. When I got home, I went straight to my room and locked the door. Jackson was inside his room, as usual. Knock, knock, knock. My heart sank. Jackson? "Can we talk, Ben?" he asked. I'm about to go to bed. Please, it won't take long." I opened the door. Jackson stood a few steps back, smiling. "What do you want?" I asked. He sat on the couch, stiff and deliberate. "What makes your life?" he asked. I stared at him. "My friends, my family." He stared at me, never breaking eye contact. Then Jackson said, "Is that normal for most humans?" I looked at him perplexed. "What the hell do you mean?" His smile grew wider. "To stay under the radar, you must have friends and family." I was taken aback. "All right, Jackson, I've got work in the morning. Good night." He stood up almost robotically and headed toward his room. Before shutting the door, Jackson stared at me. "We are friends, Ben, right?" I nodded. He shut the door. The next morning, something felt wrong. Jackson's bedroom door was wide open. I don't know what came over me. Curiosity, fear, instinct. But I walked toward it. A slick, squishing sound came from inside. I hesitated. Then I looked in. Something was standing there, hunched over, trying to pull Jackson's skin over itself like clothing. The box sat beneath its feet. It twisted its head toward me in an impossible motion. I screamed and ran. At the front office, I told the woman my roommate wasn't normal. She forced a polite smile. "What's your apartment number?" 367. She frowned at her computer. "Sir, you were never assigned a new roommate." The police came, then the FBI. They told me Jackson was reported missing days before I met him. Then they asked about a woman named Amber. "I barely sleep anymore. I'm still stuck in the apartment. I can't break the lease. Last night I saw it on the news. They found Jackson's body. His skin was missing." I don't think my recovery is going the way it should. That's not fear talking. I'm not in pain exactly. If anything, I feel calmer than I probably should. Comfortable. But there are gaps. Entire stretches of time I can't account for, and when I try to focus on them, my thoughts slide away like they're tired of being held. Let me start from the beginning. I was finally back in my apartment. The place stunk of cleaning agents and something faintly like pungent soap. Bleach and dish soap. Sharp enough to sting the back of your throat, but was thankfully free of pests. My Uber driver was kind enough to help me up the stairs. The bandages on my legs made it hard to walk comfortably. It was kind of weird seeing a few of my neighbors' houses marked with fumigation signs and taped off, but nothing compared to how happy I was to finally be home. The couch was a sight out of a romance movie compared to the stiff hospital cot I'd been sleeping on for the better part of 4 days. I resisted the urge to flop into it, still a bit uneasy about what had led me to need all these bandages in the first place. Nothing under the cushions, thank God. I eased myself down into my usual spot, hissing slightly as one of the wounds on my leg stretched in an uncomfortable way. Still a massive improvement. The bites were painful but healing, slowly. They still wouldn't scab properly, but at least they were closing. Remote in hand, Netflix, trashy romance blaring in the background, and my favorite soda. Exactly what I needed, at least until the knocking came. Seriously? I know they said my insurance would cover home health care, but I'd barely been home 2 hours. My bandages shouldn't need changing for at least a day, right? With a quiet, okay, maybe loud, groan of frustration, I peeled myself off the couch. My back and legs, wounds, threatened to tear again as I eased my way to the door. I wasn't expecting anything in particular. Maybe a guy fresh out of college, maybe some woman with a slightly chubby build. Anything but the old, cheerful woman who greeted me by pushing her way inside the moment the door opened. My, what a lovely home. Oh, but you could use some cleaning. Must be tough in your state, dear. That sing-song voice grated on my nerves, almost as much as her jostling past me did. Can I help you? I asked flatly, half expecting I'd let in a saleswoman or maybe some kind of religious nut. Why, dear, I'm here to help with all of this. She motioned dismissively to my entire being. You're in such a state. So she was my nurse. All right. Look, not to be rude, but it's been a tough week. Can we just do whatever you need? My mother wouldn't really approve of me being such a poor host, but it's not like she'd ever find out. The woman stood there for a solid beat, simply staring at me with that same cheerful smile you'd see printed on a metal tin of pancake batter. Take a seat, dear. Calm, still sweet. Now, sitting I could get behind. At least I wouldn't have to worry about stepping wrong and hurting myself. She placed a hand on my back as I leaned forward, gently pushing me into position. Somehow she avoided the wounds, and her hands were surprisingly warm. Now I'm going to grab a few things from my bag. You have a drink, yes? It's bitter, but it'll do wonders. She chirped as she moved with a slightly alarming amount of energy toward the door, retrieving the bag she'd left behind. It was an old thing, black faux leather, or maybe real, with a gaudy floral strap and way too many pockets. I was expecting something herbal, but instead she pulled out a standard orange pill bottle. She unscrewed the cap and shook a couple of blue-pink capsules into her open palm. Just 2 today, dear. We might up the dose later. I didn't think nurses usually handed out medication, but I reasoned the doctors must have sent her with it. I'd always been too trusting of people I thought were in the medical field. After all, that's what you're raised to do, right? Mom was always the one to comfort us during shots, saying, "The doctor knows best." Whatever was in that medication worked fast. The pain disappeared in moments, replaced by a looseness, a light dizziness. All the while, the nurse rested her hand on my shoulder and gently squeezed. I remember how warm it felt. Things got fuzzy from there. I know she applied some ointment to a few of my nastier wounds. We chit-chatted a bit, the usual stuff. Any new pain? Feeling tired? Having trouble staying awake? She asked gently. I told her I felt drowsy. She just grinned. That's normal. Means it's working, dear. I slept better than I had in days that night. No waking up to fresh blood where a scab had torn loose. No nightmares about things crawling in my bed. Just black nothing. I woke up to blood on my sheets the next morning. At first, my thoughts turned to the worst, but something dulled the panic before it could really take hold. I've never been good with the sight of my own blood. That calm didn't sit right with me. Still, it helped me focus. The bandages she'd applied yesterday, soaked with whatever ointment she'd used, had come undone. My left arm was bare, wounds leaking blood through half-formed scabs. I couldn't help but notice, though. The scabs were gone. Not crumbling away, not falling apart. Staying. Maybe the cream was working. I eased myself out of bed, carefully balled up the sheets, and tossed them onto the floor. I'd deal with them later. I just limped into the kitchenette when the knocking came again. I took a deep breath and steadied myself against the counter. The medicine had clearly worn off. Every step tore, every bandage rubbed grit against open wounds that felt newly exposed. I'll be there in a... The click of the doorknob cut me off, and there she was again. Same cheery smile, same beige cardigan, same black bag with the tacky floral strap. Oh, hey, thanks for coming back, I said awkwardly, wondering how she'd gotten in. Had I left the door unlocked yesterday? Hello again, dear. Ready for your medicine? Same tone, same energy. It was too easy to let her take over. I was tired. I was sore. I just wanted it done. Sure, I said. Just let me get a sandwich or something. She gasped, a hand flying to her mouth. Shock, or maybe hurt, replacing her usual chipper demeanor. Oh, no, no, no. You need to rest, dear. Let me handle that for you. I tried to protest, but she took my arm and pulled me toward the couch. Pain flared as the movement reminded me just how much the medicine had hidden the day before. I felt a pang of annoyance as she helped herself to my fridge, pulling out a cold bottle of water and handing it to me along with another round of those blue-pink pills. Still, I couldn't complain. They worked. Within minutes, my aches eased and the world began to blur around the edges. I must have dozed off when the smell hit me. Bacon. I turned my gaze from the TV, which at some point I'd apparently managed to turn back on, now playing a nature documentary, and toward the kitchen. She'd put on an apron and was busy cutting lettuce. The thought of saying something, anything, about her helping herself to my groceries was pushed aside by this idea of a warm meal, not from a hospital. And I'm glad I didn't. She made a classic breakfast spread, perfectly cooked scrambled eggs, fluffy and soft, bacon just how I like it, a little chewy with some crunch. She even turned it into a couple of BLTs, all arranged neatly on a platter I didn't remember her bringing, alongside a tall glass of some kind of juice. Now, dear, it's a little bitter at first, but trust me, it'll help. She wasn't lying. It tasted like orange juice mixed with lemon, sugar, and something distinctly medicinal. Whatever it was, warmth spread from my gut outward, turning what had been a dull, painless throb into a light, almost drunken floatiness. She spent the next hour going over my words, talking about her garden and how Reginald had been acting up again. Apparently, She named her plants, which I found kind of adorable. She spoke about their care the same way she spoke about me, as if they were patients too. Those pills really did wonders. I didn't feel a thing. Not as she peeled away rust red, crusted bandages and replaced them with clean ones. Now as she pressed ointment slick fingers into open wounds. The scabs from the previous session were holding, but the skin around them had taken on a strange discoloration. I looked at her, vision blurred, the world soft. Hey, is it supposed to be yellow? She watched me for a moment, one eyebrow quirking up as she processed the question. Then that same reassuring smile spread across her face. Why, of course, dearie. That just means the medicine is getting rid of all those nasty little toxins in your... Well, they're not really bites so much as openings. She paused, stroking one of my wounds perhaps a bit too long. It was odd. She looked almost loving as she applied the ointment, but not to me, to the wound. Then again, I wasn't exactly in the best state of mind. The pain might have been gone, but I was bone tired, drifting in and out of sleep as she tended to me. When I turned to look at her, she lifted her head to meet my gaze, still smiling. I woke up in my bed. New bandages, clean sheets. It was dark out. I must have slept all day. The thought of getting up felt pointless, but I tried anyway. No dice. My body felt unbearably heavy, and I let sleep take me again. I blinked, and the scene shifted. Daylight. The weakness was fading, my mind still foggy, but slowly clearing. What was happening again? I still couldn't get up. My head tilted down to look at my body wrapped in bandages, but something felt off. Or rather, smelled off. Urine. And something else. Sour. Stale. I'd messed the bed. I couldn't feel it. I was vaguely aware of dampness, but my sense of touch felt distant, like my body belonged to someone else. The door creaked. I would say I tensed, got tight. The fear was there, but it just wasn't latching. It was like something wasn't firing in my brain, not letting the fear fully kick in. Fingers. Fingers I recognized. Old, wrinkled, gripped the door and slowly pushed it open, allowing my nurse to poke her head into my room. Oh dear, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have left you so long. I had other patients, you see. Reginald really was acting up today. Didn't want to take his medicine, you see. She began to ramble, walking up to me and flipping me over as if she'd already done this a dozen times. She cleaned me, changed my sheets, gave me some kind of injection I barely felt. Sadly, you can't really drink like this. She paused, looking almost regretful, or maybe just concerned. She took my limp hand in hers. It made me realize how cold I felt. She turned to look me dead in the eye, cheer returning to her demeanor. But don't worry, dear. I've got you. It's been like this for days. I get my sense of touch back from time to time. I've written this in pieces. She says I'm straining myself too much, but she's just being nice. I don't really want her to leave. She's so nice, but something's wrong. I don't know what, but this isn't right. I got a text saying my insurance wouldn't cover the home health care. How nice of her to do this in her free time. She has to be a volunteer. How else would she know to come? She mentioned that Reginald had been doing better in the last couple of days. Something about me helping him along. She says this is all part of the process. All part of how she helps us get better. This was a rule as far back as I can remember. I always just assumed it was some sort of thing about keeping me safe, so I don't pinch my fingers or burn myself somehow. I don't really become curious until I started driving my own hand-me-down at 15. Whenever I turned the key in the ignition, I heard laborious wheezing briefly before a low humming and a grunt. When I put it in drive and pressed down on the gas pedal, the car would begin to moan as wet tearing and mechanical snapping resonated loudly. It wasn't until I rode in friends' cars that I realized engines don't breathe like mine did. At that point, I only ever really rode in my parents' cars, and my own when I practiced driving. When I asked my dad about it, he was livid. I thought it was just a mundane question, but his face turned beet red, and he told me to never speak on it again, to drop the subject. I thought for a second that he would slap me across the face. Needless to say, I kept on driving without popping the hood, scared of the consequences, but I couldn't help but feel curious when I heard faint knocking sounds. Sometimes the AC sounded like it was slowly dragging air back into itself, ragged like a malfunctioning part. My friends would comment on it. They thought my car was broken. Some found it creepy. They didn't ask me to drive them around much. Help me. Help. I heard it at a stoplight one morning while driving to school. It was faint, so quiet. I almost couldn't hear it at all, but it's what pushed me over the edge. As soon as I parked, I pulled the lever under the seat and heard for the first time the pop of the hood. I got out and squeezed my fingers under the metal, preparing for whatever may lie under. I looked around briefly to make sure no one was near, and I began to lift up. As soon as I started to lift the hood, I heard a loud, pealing sound and a cry. My stomach turned and I continued my effort. I ignored the sound and jerked it up the rest of the way with a sick tear. The sight sent me reeling with nausea. A man. No, more like pieces of a man were scattered throughout a disgusting, bloody amalgamation of flesh and veins, and unrecognizable bones. Long fingers jutted out randomly, moving spastically, blood under their worn nails. A single, fleshy pink exposed lung expanded and contracted with terrible, ragged breaths. Metal tubes and wires and gears interrupted the mass, ripping through the flesh, leaving charred skin in places and intersecting at odd angles. Then I saw the face. It was stretched out, close to ripping apart. Two eyeballs were stuck open, bloodshot red with black soot tears staining the skin around them. The nose was more like two open cavities that mucus bubbled from. The mouth was stretched open like the eyes, and the inside was stained black along jagged and broken teeth. It began to scream something awful. My grip slipped as I fell to my knees. The hood slammed shut, and I couldn't stop myself from heaving up my breakfast onto the pavement. My world was spinning. I went about my day without really being able to focus on much. The sight of the car had me shaken to my core. I was terrified when school let out. I'd have to drive home. I sat inside the car, my fingers tingling as they held the key right at the ignition. When I gathered the courage finally, I turned the key and I was met with the familiar grunt and wheeze followed by bones snapping and flesh rendering as I drove it home. Oil. I need oil. The death rattle beckoned from the AC vent. I tried to ignore it the best I could. Please, God, please. It was too much. I raced the rest of the way home, and my parents were both gone still. I searched the garage for oil, eventually grabbing the container and heading back to my car. I popped the hood, the sick squelching loudly entering my ears. Oil. The mouth opened as wide as it could, a putrid rotting odor emanating it. Its eyes were crying black tears. I unscrewed the lid and, with trembling hands, began to pour. The thick, yellow fluid began to flow into its mouth. I gagged as I watched the mouth guzzle it like a thirsty dog. It trickled out the sides of the mouth and coated the cracked teeth. I stopped pouring once the tears stopped flowing from its eyes. I shut the hood and carefully put the oil back in its place. This routine continued for the next week. All the while, I never confronted my dad, fearful for his response. The engine would speak to me occasionally, making requests like turning the AC down or slowing down my speed. I obliged. One night, I sat with my parents for dinner as they joked about memories from my childhood. My mom grabbed a photo album and started pointing out embarrassing kid pictures of me. My blood ran cold when I saw a familiar man in a photo holding me as a baby. "Who's that?" My fingers trembled under the table. "That's your Uncle Tommy. He was your father's brother," my mom responded. My dad smiled a half smile that seemed to hide some other emotion. "He passed away when you were real little." "Oh, I didn't know that." My fingers dug into my thigh. "How did he die?" "Colon cancer. Sad thing. Same thing that got your grandfather." He frowned a bit and stood up from the table. "I think I'll excuse myself. Those photos are great, hun." He squeezed my mom's hand and left the room without another word. "Don't mind him. Of course it's a touchy subject." She smiled at me and showed me more photos. I resolved that I needed to see what was inside my dad's car. I waited for the night to settle in, and for my parents to sleep. I grabbed my flashlight and the keys from the front room. Outside in the cold darkness, I quietly unlocked his car and pulled the lever, releasing a sick cracking noise as I did. I trained my flashlight on the hood, and I steeled myself before lifting it with a swift motion. The rotting stench of burning flesh and oil hit me hard. The flashlight made the blood and mucus shine back at me. The man-engine hybrid groaned at me, gray hairs and wrinkled. Greenish skin wrapped around its face. I knew this man. This was my grandfather. I recoiled and dropped the hood back down. "What are you doing?" The voice echoed from behind me, scruffy and demanding. I saw the shadow of my father against the hood of his car. I turned to face him, my spine like jelly. I shuddered. I couldn't think. "You know I told you to never look there, right?" He grimaced. "Always the curious type, just like Tommy." I tried to back up, but I ran into the car. "Someday it'll be me in there, you know. Someday your mother. And eventually, it'll be you." He began to step away from me. "I tried to warn you, son. Don't go telling anyone about this, or your time will come sooner than mine." He turned his back and walked back inside. My chest felt tight, and I was left cold and confused. I went inside and laid in bed, unable to sleep. The image of my grandfather burned forever in my vision. I shouldn't have written this. I know what he said would happen if I did. But I can't keep this secret. The burden is too much. It's only a matter of time before I become one of them. And when it does, I need someone to know what they're driving. What's really under the hood. The siren started just after dinner. That long, wounded animal howl that makes your spine tighten even if you've heard it 100 times. I was washing the dishes at the sink. My wife, Karen, was wiping the table. The kids were arguing about who'd taken the last roll. "Cellar, now," I said. Not loud, just firm. "We practice this. We live on the edge of town. South side, where the fields open up and the sky feels bigger than it should. Missouri's like that. The weather runs thick here. So does faith. I'd preached on storms before. How God sends rain on the just and unjust. How he's a refuge. I believed it. I still do." The cellar door groaned like it always did. The steps were damp. I flicked on the light and the bulb buzzed. We filed down, the kids first. Eli, 7, Ruth, 11, Caleb, 14, then Karen, then me, pulling the door closed. I latched it. I could feel the pressure change in my ears already. The radio crackled, tornado warning, rotation confirmed, take shelter immediately. Karen reached for my hand. I could feel her shaking. She leaned close so the kids wouldn't hear it in her voice. "Daryl, what do we do now?" I didn't hesitate. "We rest in God," I said with conviction, "same as we always have." The wind started to thump against the house, low and heavy. Dust sifted from the joists. I glanced at the kids huddled on the bench, eyes wide. "Come here, guys." They huddled in, knees touching. "Let's pray." We bowed our heads. I asked God to cover our home, to put His hand between us and the storm. I said we trusted Him. I meant it. The wind began to scream overhead. A freight train sound like the old folks say, only louder than any train I've ever heard. Something hit the house. The walls shuddered. Dirt sifted from the ceiling and dusted our shoulders. Ruth started to cry. I kept praying. I prayed louder. Then, as sudden as it came, the sound pulled away. The pressure eased. The radio said the cell had lifted, jogged east, spared the town center. By morning, we climbed out to broken branches and a torn-up fence. No roof gone, no walls down. Praise God. At church that Sunday, the sanctuary was packed. Folks cried and hugged. We sang louder than usual. The pastor said we'd been spared for a reason. I nodded. I thought of the prayer in the cellar and felt sure I'd been heard. It started with a rash on Eli's arm. Red, angry, like poison ivy but wetter. We tried calamine, then antibiotics from the urgent care. The skin broke open anyway. It smelled wrong, sweet and sour at the same time. Karen got a spot on her neck 2 days later, then Caleb's ankle. People around town started showing up with bandages, with scarves and warm weather. The ER filled up. The state called in help. Men with white hazmat suits started knocking on doors. A woman from the CDC took swabs. She didn't meet my eyes. "We're asking everyone to stay inside," she said. "This is temporary." It wasn't. Karen's skin darkened around the wound, sloughing like wet paper. She tried to joke. "Guess I won't be wearing my Sunday dress," she said. Then she cried when she thought I wasn't looking. They set up roadblocks. National Guard trucks idled at the exits. Phones buzzed with rumors. Bioterror. Judgment. I prayed more. I asked what lesson we were supposed to learn. They didn't gather us in person. Instead, everyone logged into a town-wide Zoom call. Faces boxed and jittery. Microphones muting and unmuting. A man with gray hair and tired eyes filled the main screen. The audio lagged for a second before he spoke. His voice flat and careful, like every word had been rehearsed. "We believe the tornado aerosolized topsoil from the agricultural area and dispersed mucorals, spores, present in it over the town." A woman unmuted herself. "What's that mean?" The scientist hesitated, fingers tight on the mic. "It's complicated." I pulled my phone out, thumbs clumsy. Mucor? Autocorrect fixed it. I clicked the first result and felt my throat tighten. I unmuted myself and read out loud. "Mucormycosis," I said. "A rare but serious fungal infection. Causes tissue death. Sometimes called," I swallowed, "flesh-eating black fungus." The call went very quiet. "There's no reason to be alarmed." the scientist tried to reassure us. We're working on antifungals. Containment is critical. I thought of the prayer, of the storm turning away from the heart of town, like a finger lifted at the last second. Eli didn't last the week. The infection moved fast once it reached his shoulder. He tried to be brave. "Dad," he said, voice thin, "did I do something wrong?" "No, son," I told him. "Jesus loves you." When they took his body, they sealed the bag tight. I could still smell that wrong sweetness in the house. Karen followed 2 days later, then Ruth. I held Caleb on the night when his fever spiked. I prayed harder than I ever had. I begged God to spare just one of my children. Caleb died before dawn. I'm alone now. Quarantine tape still flaps at the end of the street. The fields are quiet. The sky is clear. I sit in the cellar with the radio off and the Bible open, staring at words about refuge and mercy. I turn to a page I don't remember marking. Job. Thin paper whispering. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Below it, I see another verse. Shall we accept good from God and not trouble? I close the book. My fingers itch. The skin near my wrist has gone soft, darker than it should be. It smells faintly sweet. I'm not afraid anymore. I pray that God receives me. I take comfort in the quiet promise of seeing my family again in heaven.